There was a Hasidic aphorism that the followers of the Alter Rebbe would say, that inside my slice of bread, there's your share too. God is providing for you through me. And then they would say your share first before their own share, which is pretty remarkable. So what's the uniqueness of the Jewish people this letter is going to bring out? The Alter Rebbe begins by very warm words in this letter. My beloved ones, my brethren and friends, who are alike unto me like my soul. It says, I am coming to remind and awaken for those who are asleep in a slumber of vanities, meaning referring to physical world, the material world, that it's vanities of vanities, that it's insubstantial, it's not real, it's not true existence. And it says that people are blinding themselves in a material world with bodily needs. Let them look and see that all their strivings, longing and aiming should be bound up only with the fountain of life, the source of life, with God. Not just during the times of prayer or when doing a mitzvah or like now studying Torah, but that we should attach ourselves at all times in mundane matters. When we earn a livelihood, that we should learn a livelihood and not be, as the Alter Rebbe says, like the nations of the world, who make a livelihood in order to provide for their family, which would sound, well, hey, kind of responsible and good. But he calls this a selfish love, self-love. In other words, taking care of your family. Well, your family is a part of you. You're a part of your family, which, by the way, today, that's even an accomplishment. Unfortunately, we live in a world that notion may not be so obvious. But that's not the Jewish way, he says. Mi ka'amcha Israel goy echad ba'aretz. Who is like you, the people of Israel? Goy echad means a unique nation. The word goy, by the way, means nation. So the Jewish people are also called a nation. That's the real term of the word goy. People, it's a non-Jew. Well, no, Jewish people are also called by that term because it means a nation. But we're a unique nation on earth. And the Alter Rebbe explains, what does that phrase mean? What does that verse mean in Divrei Hayomim? That we are a unique nation in the earth. So it means not we're unique because of the spiritual qualities of the Jewish people. We have the Torah, we study Torah, right? That's given to the Jewish people, and that's something unique that was given to them. So you might say, their spirituality is something unique. Nope, he says the uniqueness is ba'aretz, in earthiness, in mundane activity. In other words, that in the mundane activity, we don't separate ourselves from God and his true unity. We don't bear false witness by saying the Shema, by covering our eyes when we say the Shema. Hear, Israel, that the Lord our God, Hashem is one, the oneness of God. And then we open our eyes and we see, a mundane world before us, and, we get lost, we get blinded, and that we don't see in the mundane realm of existence the oneness of God. In other words, we experience it in prayer, we feel connected in prayer, but that we should feel connected and a oneness with God in the materiality of our lives. He's saying, don't bear false witness, and that you don't live that way or sense that way the oneness that there is with God in the material world. Rather, what should be then? Our involvement, the alternative is now from what we shouldn't be, what should we be? Our involvement with mundane affairs should be not for its own sake. In other words, not for as an end in itself, as a value for itself, but in order that we should be able to provide in here, to provide for others, for the Jewish people, to give, to be like God. God gives chesed, kindness throughout the day, so we also have to give consistently, constantly, and providing for others. God is animating the universe and giving us life at every moment. So we likewise should do the same, give life. So not like we're charitable at, convenient times. We're not charitable like as an afterthought. Not that we're charitable, after I, take care of me. No. God is animating, giving life to us at all times in his kindness. So likewise, we need to animate and give life to others at all times. Specifically, the connection to a fellow Jew. It's this concept, even though charity is also beyond giving to a fellow Jew, but this is the context of it. And so the Alter Rebbe says, that being stated, we have a responsibility to our wife and children first. And therefore, because Torah says that they take precedence, right, except for tzaddikim of the generation, they take precedence even over our children, especially tzaddikim that are in the Holy Land. And that's the end of this slide over here. Let's unpack this for a moment. The Alter Rebbe is saying over here is the human condition is, human love is, the natural thing to do is to be concerned for your wife and children because that's your family. That's yours. That's mine. You belong to me. And therefore, I take care of you. I love you because you're an extension of me. You're a part of me. And therefore, I take care of you. What the Alter Rebbe is saying that is the human condition, the nations of the world. That's not the Jewish way. The Jewish way is that every Jew is really someone who we have a responsibility, a connection to. And that was the aphorism that we mentioned at the beginning, that inside my slice of bread, there is your share too. God is providing for you through me. In other words, that's a selfless love that I feel. In other words, it's not a selfish love means it's that when I'm feeling a connection because that is my bodily connection. And bodily, as the Talmud tells us, husband and wife are like one body, they say. They're one soul, two halves of one soul. But also body, they're like ishteki gufay. A woman, it's like the man's, they're one. Children, that come from parents are also one. Actually, that's the verse that says in the beginning when Adam says that a man should leave his parents' home and cleave to his wife and become basar echad, one flesh. They become one flesh by each other and then through each other. By each other meaning the two coming together, but also through each other because they have a child and they become one flesh. That's human love. And that's a selfish love. A self-love. Selfless love is not coming from the body, from materiality, but coming from the soul. From the soul's perspective, the Jewish people are one entity. And therefore, for one entity, when you sense that connection, you feel responsible for that. As a result, you feel responsible what you can do for every Jew. Now, even though I feel connected to on the soul level so deeply, nonetheless, Torah comes and mandates that I have to take care of my wife and children first. So it comes out of duty rather than just because I want to do that, which is interesting. Think about it. In other words, doing out of duty rather than out of love? To do it out of love sounds much more, first of all, romantic. But to do it out of just out of love is self-love. To do it out of duty is actually even deeper and more responsible. Let me give you an example. I'll give you a couple of examples. Anybody ever take their children to a restaurant and when they're little and they kind of act up? You grind your teeth and you tell them, stop that. Don't throw that. Talk nicely to your sister. Child probably doesn't, might stop in the moment, but do they really listen? Do they change? No. You know why? Why did you want them to stop? Was it the love you have for them? No, because you're in a public place where other people are seeing you, and if you're at a kosher restaurant, probably another Jew there that knows you, and your kids are acting up. What is that? It's a reflection on me. What a lousy parent I must be. Look at how the kids are acting, or whatever the people might think, right? But they're going to think negative if the kids are acting up, and therefore it's a reflection on me, and because of that, I want to stop them in their wildness, right? What's that? Is that really loving the child? No. Caring about the child? Not at all. It's called self-love. Since they're a reflection and an image of, they're a reflection of me, and now they don't show a very good reflection because of the way they're acting out. So I want to stop that. So it has nothing to do about them, about being proper, about learning something. Not, as opposed to if it was really about them, you speak to them in a nice way. You speak to them not, just trying to stop them in their, if a kid has a knife, you got to stop them, obviously, since it shouldn't hurt themselves or someone else. But if it's just because they're acting out and the reason we speak the way we do and act the way we do is because they're, again, a reflection of me. And I want to stop that so that's not loving your child, that's loving you. Because they're a reflection of you, you act that way. We've all done that. Anybody who has children and been in the public domain. Just the point I'm bringing out over here is that the love that we have for a child sometimes might not be for them. It might be just a self-love. A love that we have for our spouse might also be that. So to do it because you're obliged, right? I'm obliged to educate my child properly. Not because they're a reflection of me merely, but I have that responsibility. That's why it's my child. So out of duty that I will now sit the child and say, Yankel, You have an opportunity here that you could make a Kiddush Hashem. You could, act appropriately, and people will look at you, look, oh, child with a yarmulke, and act so nicely, and, you'll inspire people. That would be a beautiful thing. Think about that before you speak to your sister that way. Or, it's not appropriate to speak to your sister that way. You might hurt her feelings. It's just, we need to speak nicely. That's out of duty, out of true love that we have. So that's what the Alter Rebbe is saying over here, is that we could do it out of self-love, or we could do it on a higher level, that there's a bond and a connection that's deeper. It's not a self-love, and out of a responsibility, duty. It will reflect itself, and then you'll give what your spouse needs and what the children need, because that's what your duty is. That's part of serving God. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have the human love. That's there, but we rise above it. As in the story, the famous story of the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe. He was studying late at night with a study partner who was the teacher of his son, who was a 6-year-old boy at the time, sleeping on a cot in the same room where they were studying. His study partner, the teacher of the 6-year-old boy, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, who would later become the 6th Lubavitcher Rebbe, our Rebbe's father-in-law, and he says to his father, look at him. You could see the pure thoughts in his dreams on his face. And his father was aroused in him such a profound, deep love for him, and he wanted to give him a kiss. Then he held himself back, and he wrote a Hasidic discourse and gave it to him 5 years later when he was 11 years old. And here he said, this is a Hasidic kiss. And told him the story, what happened. And so he was aroused with a human love that he wanted to kiss his son. But what he did was transform it into a divine love, to give him something that would be meaningful. And that was a Hasidic discourse that he gave to him 5 years later, when he would appreciate the discourse and the story, of course. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't kiss your children. Kiss your children, absolutely. But sometimes we kiss our children because of our need, our desire of self-love, not for what the child needs. That's why it's called smothering someone with love. You're smothering them to death. It's not about them, it's about you. You want this. You need this. That's a self-love, so we have to be careful. Well, we will have that, but we should not be limited by that. That's the nations of the world, and comes the Torah, comes the soul that we have. It gives us access to a much deeper place to God, deeper place to each other as a result of our soul and the soulful connection, and therefore we can express that love through devotion in a much more beautiful way, much more meaningful way.